What if there was a world full of unspeakable creatures that existed in the shadow of ours? What if those creatures found a way into our world? What if? Welcome back, guys. It's Motion Recaps again, and today we're covering the 2013 horror movie, Banshee Chapter. Spoilers incoming. Let's begin. When a young writer named James disappears after consuming a drug that was used by the CIA in the infamous project called MKUltra, his friend Anne goes on a quest to find him. She hears an unexplained radio transmission on James's last video. She visits the radio expert, and he gives her the location of a place where she can hear and record the transmissions. After that, she teams up with a writer who sent the drug to James. The two of them slowly connect the dots as they venture deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of monstrous human experiments. This movie sounds pretty promising, doesn't it? Well, before I tell you any more, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you've not yet already done so, hit that like button if you're enjoying this recap thus far, and turn on notifications to be notified next time we've got another movie recap ready for you to enjoy. In the meantime, let's carry on with Banshee Chapter. The movie begins with stock footage of President Clinton and other people announcing the existence of the government experiment project MKUltra. The scene then cuts away to camera footage of James Hirsch, a young writer investigating Project MKUltra. With a friend filming him, James takes the drug used in the experiments, dimethyltryptamine 19, also known as DMT-19. After some time of being drugged, James hears weird voices coming out of a nearby radio. At that moment, James becomes extremely anxious, announcing that something is coming towards the house and that it wants to wear them. A large, shadowy figure rushes by the window, and the camera's footage cuts in and out, ultimately ending with a shot of James with blackened eyes and a disfigured face. Then we meet our protagonist, Anne, a reporter who attended college with James. We find out that James has disappeared. The police thought it was his friend, but he disappeared too, just like James. Anne decides to try to find James, and she arrives at his house. She goes to his room, where she finds a bunch of notes about DMT-19 and MKUltra. She also finds a Betamax tape, a letter from James's friend in Colorado who gave him the DMT-19, and the pictures of her and James. Anne then hears a loud bang in the house, and she leaves immediately. Anne then goes to a shop whose owner is a radio enthusiast and expert. He takes her to his secret radio room. Anne then plays him the last footage of James, and then the radio expert tells her that the bizarre radio broadcast heard by James is a phantom radio station. A number station is a shortwave radio station characterized by broadcasts of formatted numbers. Their source is unknown. People speculate that the Secret Services use them. The interesting thing about them is that a female voice almost always reads the numbers. Anne asks the radio expert if it's possible for her to record the broadcast. He tells her it's possible only if she goes to the edge of Black Rock Desert between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. That's the only way for her to record it. Anne then reveals to the expert that she knows he worked for the NSA, and she tries to pull more questions out of him. Anne drives to the furthest edge of the Black Rock Desert, and she sits in her car, waiting for the broadcast. She talks to herself, and we find out that she has a crush on James. Suddenly, after some time of waiting, Anne hears the broadcast. Then she gets outside of her car to check if anything is there. She's looking around with her flashlight, and suddenly, she sees a mysterious creature in the darkness. Anne immediately gets into her car and leaves. Anne talks with a colleague, Olivia, at work, and she tells her that James got DMT-19 from his friend in Colorado. Olivia then brings Anne a book by the same name. A writer named Thomas Blackburn is the author of the book, and he's a really controversial character. Anne calls him, hoping she'll get some information about James, but Blackburn hangs up immediately after Anne tells him she's a journalist. Anne then takes the Betamax that she found and she plays it. We see patient number 11 while one doctor is giving him a drug and then restraining him. Another doctor is watching behind a double-sided mirror. After some time passes, patient 11 starts speaking some code. He announces that they are here, and then he disappears into the darkness. Suddenly, he shows up again and bashes the double-sided mirror, begging the doctor to let him out. The footage then cuts to dead patient number 5, while doctors are extracting DMT-19 from her brain. Anne then sets off to find Blackburn. She meets him in a bar, and she tells him that her name is Sarah. After some small talk, they head to Blackburn's house to take some DMT-19. Anne meets Blackburn's friend Callie, who is making all the DMT-19. Blackburn then goes to his office with Anne, where he pours them some DMT-19. Anne pours the drug into the trash bin, while Blackburn drinks it, and then he pours him some whiskey. He reveals to Anne that he knows she lied about her identity, and that she will avoid taking the drug. That's why he put the drug in the whiskey. Anne panics, and she goes away to a room where Callie is. Callie is really tripping out. She's acting ultra weird, as she exhibits the same behaviors that James did earlier in the movie. She's constantly saying to Anne that something can see her and that it's coming towards her. Anne hears some of the bizarre music played by the Phantom station, and she goes to investigate. Everything seems normal downstairs. But suddenly, Anne gets attacked by a strange creature that breaks the window behind her. Anne quickly returns to Callie. Blackburn is there too, and when Anne tells him what's happening, he doesn't believe her at all. Instead, he thinks that they're hallucinating because of the drug, and he bravely goes to open the doors. However, he sees the creature and he closes the doors immediately. Lights turn off, and the group hears loud banging at the door. Blackburn is trying to find his gun. Suddenly, we see Callie's disfigured face while she's spewing blood. Anne and Blackburn wake up a few hours later. She punches him a few times because he drugged her. They look around for Callie, but they cannot find her. Then they start to hear the radio noises, and the two of them immediately leave the house. They get into Blackburn's car, and they decide to figure out what the deal is about the drug. Then we get footage of patient number 14. The doctor injects enhanced DMT-19 into her, and she acts really aggressively. She frees herself, and the doctors find her. However, she has some type of seizure, and the footage cuts there. Anne and Blackburn are in the middle of nowhere. She tells him everything about James and her plan to find him. Blackburn reveals to her that he really did send the DMT-19 to James. He apologizes to Anne and says that he didn't know that James would disappear because of the drug. The two of them continue to chat, and then Anne sees a horrifying face. She turns around, only to see possessed Blackburn bleeding out. She drives away, and after some time, they arrive near Callie's house. Blackburn is feeling a little better, and he tells Anne that the DMT-19 turns the consumer's mind into a receiver. Anne asks him who he knows, and he replies that it's just a feeling. Anne takes the radio so she can stay in contact with Blackburn, and then she slowly enters Callie's house. Blackburn instructs Anne where to go, and she ends up in a basement that's full of weird equipment. There, she finds pieces of human brain Callie used to extract the DMT-19. Anne also finds a map, on which the infamous Chamber 5 is marked. That's the place where the CIA did the MK-Ultra experiments. Anne then looks at Callie's laptop, and there she finds audio from one MK-Ultra experiment session. A human research subject speaks some kind of code, and Anne quickly finds out that the code is instead a formula for the DMT-19. She realizes that the government never came up with the DMT-19, but instead received instructions from the otherworldly creatures and made the drug without realizing the full implication of their actions. She tells Blackburn that he was right, and that the drug turns the brain into the receiver for creatures. Anne then checks the security cameras, and it terrifies her when she sees that the creature infiltrated into the basement a few minutes before she got in. She tries to sneak out when the creature suddenly grabs her leg. Anne runs out of the house and gets into the car and immediately drives away. Then they make a stop to take a leak. Anne tells Blackburn that the radio signal is coming from Chamber 5. Blackburn reveals to Anne that he never drugged her and that she should go save herself. However, she tells him that the creatures will follow her regardless because James's friend disappeared and he didn't take any of the drugs either. Anne and Blackburn then decide to go into Chamber 5 and to end the broadcast once and for all. Then we see footage of the doctor extracting the chemical from a dead woman's brain. The woman is labeled as the primary source. The doctor notices that her brain is still active. The woman comes to life, and she attacks the doctor. The duo arrives near Chamber 5, and Blackburn takes his gun and a can of gasoline, intending to burn the whole place to the ground. They find out that Chamber 5 is an old fallout nuclear shelter. They get inside, and they start to carefully look around. Soon, the duo finds the room in which the doctors observe poor human subjects. After some more time looking around, they discover the weird radio device and a big tank next to it. Anne sees the tank has a window, and when she leans forward to see what's inside, an obscure face of the primary source appears. Anne figures out that the device is a transmitter, and she looks around for the gas can. However, she finds out that the creature is coming towards her. Blackburn closes the door. The creature bashes them, and Blackburn begins to bleed from the eyes and convulse violently. He takes his gun out, and he kills himself to prevent the creature from getting him. Anne then hides in the closet, but the creature finds her immediately. She runs out and starts looking for the gasoline can, while the voice from the transmitter calls her to come back. Anne finds the can, and she quickly returns to the room where the transmitter is. She pours the gasoline over the transmitter and into the tank to burn the primary source. She hears the other creature bashing through the door. Soon, it opens the door, and Anne lights everything up. The explosion knocks Anne unconscious. She wakes up, and she finds the clothing worn by her friend James before his disappearance lying outside in the hallway, implying that the creature chasing her had been wearing James the whole time. Anne is taken into police custody, and Olivia comes to ensure that she's okay. The two of them discuss the events that have happened so far, and Olivia informs her that the video forensics team restored the missing part of the tape that Anne found at James's house. Olivia asks Anne why James's friend disappeared if he didn't take the drug. Anne tells her that she still doesn't have an answer to that question. Then, she hears the phantom broadcast issuing from the room's intercom. Anne turns around, and she discovers that Olivia has been taken over by the creatures. It turns out that human touch can pass along the effects of the drug, as Anne still saw the creatures despite never having taken the drug. James touched his friend. Anne touched Callie, who took the drug. And at the end, she also touched Olivia, who became possessed. The movie then cuts to the recovered footage of the tape, and we find out that Blackburn is patient 11. And the movie ends there. And that's our recap of the movie Banshee chapter. Some really effective jump scares in there if you ask me. Tell us what you thought about this movie. Did it scare you? Did it make you jump a little bit? And please, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and hit that bell icon to be notified of when we got another movie recap ready for you to enjoy. That's all for Motion Recaps today. Until next time, my friends.